Hi, I'm John Manuel Andriot. I'm an adjunct instructor in the communication department at Eastern Connecticut State University. I'm here this morning with my emergent media reporting class to talk about issues that are on the minds of a lot of folks here at Eastern, at a lot of colleges and universities around the country. One of those issues is the role of technology in the classroom and its role in teaching students, the role of professors and instructors in higher education. Will we be seeing shifts in the future in how instruction is provided? Will the role of the professor and the faculty member change to become more of a facilitator rather than a lecturer? Will the style of learning become more didactic as opposed to lecture? And what are we looking at in the days ahead? So we started having a great discussion the other day in our class, and we're going to continue it on camera this morning. So good morning, class.
Good morning. Good morning.
So what do you guys think about the issue of using technology in the classroom? We've been using videos and online resources. A lot of you are very technically proficient in cameras and audio and broadcast. What do you think about the role of technology in the higher education classroom?
I believe our generation is not only very tech savvy, but we're very attracted to technology, and that's really how we've grown up. And the fact that we're able to use it in the classroom makes the class itself more interesting to every single student.
I agree. I think it's super important now that technology is being accepted in the classroom versus rejected. I know that back when we were in high school, Nick and I actually went to the same high school, and you were not allowed to use your cell phone. And then when we graduated, you were allowed to use your cell phone in the hallway, and then in like lunch periods. And now they have iPad stations, and kids are allowed to use their cell phones the entire class. And I think that it's just changing so much that sometimes some of the older professors and some of the older teachers don't really understand, because I know my mom is turning 60 years old, and she's like, how do you take a picture? Like, she just doesn't know how. And we were born and raised with it. So I think that with this change, that teachers really need to start changing as well.
I think it's important to get that hands-on experience in the classroom as far as technology. I know that we're discussing how we put on our weekly newscast here. I think it's important to be able to apply those skills in the field outside. When we graduate from school, we need that experience in the classroom. It can't just be strictly a lecture. Just the design of each class shouldn't just be lecture. I think it's important that you add those different elements. We do the Facebook page in our class. I think that's an interesting thing that we can, Warren was saying how it's nice to be able to lay in bed and actually interact with the other students in the class and talk and comment on what they brought up on certain topics. And so the Facebook page is a really cool element that we brought to our class, and I think that somewhere in where you can share videos and do that sort of thing, where it's not so much you talking at us and then waiting for a time to speak in return to what you were saying.
Yeah, we just started our Facebook page, which next semester I'll be sure we started at the beginning of the class. But it seems like that's exactly kind of a microcosm of what we're talking about here, the interactive, way of sharing information with each other. That I found this really cool and relevant and educational video or this article, and we're sharing that with each other. And that's a change, yeah, that you can access it wherever, but that we're all interacting with one another.
Well, I think it's important because this line has been talked about quite often in our class, and it's not only that that we learn from you, but you learn from us as well. And I think that it goes really both ways, that you've kind of learned some stuff from us as well on the tech side, whereas you got to teach us a lot of the writing and journalism side of things.
You also talked about the interactiveness and how we learn. I feel like especially with ebooks, Lauren brought up iPads in the classroom, and ebook is great because it has an interactive book. You're able to really click on a subject or look at it more and see a video of it and actually see it move and be able to interact with it. Most learners now are interactive learners, not so much just visual or just audio. You learn by interacting with something.
Something that we talked a lot about when we looked at Snowfall, that New York Times Pulitzer Prize winning multimedia story, is how they use different media, video, audio, still photos, slideshows, graphics, to help tell the story. And so now you've got this age-old human experience of storytelling, but using technology to do that. And it's in the whole field of communication, it's really changing the field by rethinking something that is old as humanity. And so it seems we would be really doing our students a disservice not to learn to use those technologies in a strategic way in our storytelling. I mean, what do you think of that?
Exactly. We are communication majors. I think almost all of us here are communication majors, and that's the basis of our education. Every field that we want to go in, we have to use some sort of technology. And if we're not using that in the classroom, then how are we going to be successful in our careers and in our future jobs? So it's really important to learn the latest technology while we're in school so we can make the mistakes, we can do trial and error, and then be successful in it when we're in our real life jobs and people are relying on us.
I think from the actual concept of grasping and learning what is being talked about, for example with Snowfall, or any website, as you're scrolling down through the page and you're reading the story or whatever it is you're looking at, I think to see those visual elements, see a picture, see a video, which reinforces what you're actually learning through. You think about studying for an exam. Yes, or you hear it in class, and you go home and rewrite your notes, and then you read your notes to your friend, and then you rewrite your notes again. That every time you see it is how you can reinforce that information in your head, and I think that helps visually when you're talking about our stories and technology and how it's being used nowadays more so. I know for the website I'm putting together for this class, through the story that I wrote, I'm also, we're breaking up into subheads each of my paragraphs, so it's not one long piece. It's, you'll read your introduction, and then you'll see a few photos, and you can stop if you want and play the video and understand what that paragraph above maybe said, and then you move on. So it reinforces what you're actually trying to get your point across to the viewer or the reader, whoever it is here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I also really think the Facebook page is a good addition to our class, because not only can you interact with your other students in the 50-minute class period, but you're able to do it at any time, which a lot of professors, they're like, you make a Facebook page for your class? I'm like, yes, do you see me like interacting with anyone in the class that I wouldn't normally interact with outside of the classroom? And that the answer is no, because why would I? And like it kind of gives you, the Facebook page kind of just gives you the opportunity just to sit in your bed, go online, and now that we're all Facebook friends and we see what each other is writing and see what each other is posting for pictures and stuff, but when we actually post on the page, we get a notification about it, and then we can open it and see what they're doing. I mean, I really like it.
I'm just thinking that the Facebook page is an example of almost like a learning community. That we're a closed group on Facebook, so we are a community with a particular purpose, and in that sense, that raises this issue of the role of the teacher, or the professor, or the instructor, whatever, as a facilitator, and what would that mean that is different from the traditional role that a professor or an instructor plays. I see personally that there's no difference, that a teacher, a professor, an instructor has always been a facilitator in terms of facilitating learning and introducing students to resources and issues that then become something they know about and they can use, and then hopefully will inspire them with the motivation to become lifelong learners. So the instructor is teaching people how to learn more than teaching specific things, I think.
I also think it's important, we had talked upon it the other day, and that's that the professor, the instructor, has had experience in the field that we're talking about, because I think it's extremely important that they didn't just get their degree and they're just talking about it. The fact that you have written for the Huffington Post, you've been in Washington, you've been in different locations in the United States. That makes us more interested in listening to your stories and listening to how you write, because we know you are a professional in the business, whereas if you just have someone who graduated from Harvard and just come over here and begin teaching, we might not be as interested. We want to hear what they did and how successful they were.
On the spectrum, I think that there's no, someone who has a PhD versus someone who's an adjunct professor. You're working in the field, you're doing this every day. You built a Facebook page for your book. No one knows better how to interact and work with a Facebook page and build it and try to get viewers or followers or likes, more so than you do, or any of us who are actually trying to get that going with a business or something outside of school. I mean, it's, yes, a lot of people who have PhDs have worked in the field prior. Many of the adjunct professors I have are doing it as we speak, so they're up to date on what's going on. I know that some professors I've had, yes, they worked in the field maybe I'm going into or I want to go into, but it's been 15, 20 years since they've been in it, so things can change. Any of us know that technology changes in a year, things can flip over. So it's,
Well, we talked about really the changes in media and the changes in how we teach people now. It took some teachers, I mean, early back, a while to realize that movies and some TV shows can teach you certain things. And now I feel like we're kind of going back to that with the internet again, as we're hesitant on using the internet as a learning tool. And now that we're using it, we're able to see really what it can do, and there's so many more things that we can do with it other than just Facebook or social media. There's a whole bunch of other websites, there's different ways you can get quizzes now.
One of the things that that I've emphasized since the beginning of our class and in the social media class is that the skills that you develop in these classes are skills that you can use in whatever field you go into. And that I actually really like Eastern's philosophy of a liberal education practically applied, with an emphasis on the practically applied part, so that what we've been learning and talking about in class is things that you can put to immediate use in your own social media, in your own career. You know, as we've worked on building our own websites for our multimedia stories, I've encouraged people to use the website for their personal website to showcase their work, their resume, and so forth, which will give them an advantage in the workplace.
Yeah, I think that hands-on experience is extremely important, and applying that in class is extremely important. You can have a 4.0 GPA, and yes, that may help you in certain aspects, but when you get out of here, especially as a communication major, you need to have hands-on experience. They're not going to take you if you just say, yeah, I took all these classes over my 4 years and I had a great GPA. Okay, well, what did you do with that GPA? And the fact that in class we're able to communicate through Facebook, use social media, also write different articles, make our own website, that's experience that maybe most other classes and some other schools don't offer to you.
I'm a firm believer in practicum style classes. Those are the most, they help us the most because it is hands-on. Like, we have the news practicum. You get a credit for coming to the news every week, putting on a news show, producing our own work. I did a practicum with Dr. Matthews to create a YouTube channel for student work for the university. So I, through that practicum, learned the ins and outs of YouTube, learned how to get more views, and that's how at least communication majors should be learning. Not lectures, not taking notes, not taking exams, but hands-on, practically applied learning.
and that goes for the TV, not only TV, the newspaper, the radio station, writing articles, producing a radio show, being able to communicate. Anyone who can talk to nobody for an hour and just have to entertain listeners. That that takes skill to be able to sit there and keep people entertained for an hour and not switch the channel. So, like Megan said, I think that's great. Our internship opportunities that we've had, we learned more. I learned more this summer in my internship than I did in a whole year of being here. Just basically because they give you the camera and say figure it out, or sit in front of this thing. News breaks. I don't have time to teach it to you. Play with it and figure out how to do it. And I think that's great. I think that's how our whole generation is adapting and evolving through this. And I think it's different, and I think it's different in a good way, though.
And that's how we can retain information, is by actually doing it. We can't retain it as well if we just learn the theory, we just learn the theoretical background of how to shoot a video. You have to actually shoot a video in order to know how to shoot a video. You need to do it so you can see how it looks. You need to make those mistakes. And every mistake you make gets you one step closer to perfection. You understand what your mistakes are, and that's how you learn.
And anyone can memorize material and regurgitate it back to you for an exam. And that's not, most students, you talk to anyone who say that most of the time that happens, these kids will forget what they learned the semester before. And where's that going to help you in anything? We pay big money to pay for each of these classes we're doing. So it's important that we get the most out of them for each semester.
I've said that in our social media strategies class, that I'm not interested in having the students memorize lists of technical terms. I said, you'll learn these as you do them. As you need to know them, you'll learn what things are called. But that, as Megan said, until you're actually doing it, it doesn't make sense. It's just abstract or theoretical,
We need to know the how, not just the why. And that's what, practicum style classes, hands-on learning, that helps us retain information, to learn how something works versus why it works, or maybe just you telling us how it would work. We need to see it ourselves.
I know we can all say there's some courses, there are rigorous courses at school here. Some kids I've heard, we take these same classes 2 or 3 or 4 times. And it's like, if you don't understand, it becomes a disconnect there. If you're learning the same material 3 semesters in a row and you're still having trouble, students you change your study habits, but you got to think of the flip side a little bit of what could the teacher also, or the professor, adjust in their curriculum that could make the material easier to grasp, or just a different approach, because each of us are different learners, some of us require it, and it's crazy to think that some of these classes that we need to take to graduate, you have to pay for 4 times, 3 times to get through, just to walk, instead of from a completely, you don't want to look at it from a financial standpoint, but the goal is to get us out and join the workforce like the rest of us and get more people in.
And that really applies to the instructor, facilitator, professor, teacher versus a PhD is doing this for us. They're failing us. We're having to take this class a bunch of times versus an adjunct who's in the field. There's less of a disconnect with an adjunct because they're working just as hard as we are to get to the same place. And that's kind of the balance. Is PhD learning that valuable now versus practically applied adjunct professor who's currently working in that environment?
In the, again, in the social media strategies class, one of the things that I've observed is that while young people have grown up using devices and using social media, it's been a learning experience, I feel like, for the students in learning to use social media strategically. And that's where, when you talk about theory and what is the method behind tweeting X number of times a day, how often should you post on Facebook? There are people who actually study these things, and come up with real instruction manuals to use. And so knowing how to use social media in general is one thing, how to post on Facebook, but knowing when to post on Facebook, what to post, how to use visuals, how to use text. I feel like that's where, as a instructor facilitator, my role has been introducing these concepts to the students. They have the technical skills, but just focusing them and knowing, how to strategically use social media to achieve their objectives. That's learning. I feel like that has been an outcome of the class.
And that will kind of encourage us to, okay, so you're telling us maybe certain times a day our posts will be more popular because more people are online. So then that encourages us to post a picture on Instagram maybe first thing in the morning, or in primetime TV time where everyone's kind of done with class, they're at home, and then we can ourselves see, okay, I got this many likes on my Instagram photo by posting it in the morning and this many by this photo at night, and we can see ourselves by you introducing those concepts to us.
Well, this has been an interesting discussion this morning with my emergent media reporting class. We've talked about the role of the faculty member, instructor, as facilitator, And whether that's really anything new or just a new way of thinking about the role of the faculty member, we've talked about the role of technology in the classroom, that it's here to stay. And I think one thing that has emerged very clearly from our discussion is that it's important for a university, like any business, to listen to its customers. And our students are our customers. And as Sims, the clothing store, discount clothing store, says, an educated consumer is our best customer. And it seems to me that our students know how they learn best, and that it's our job to facilitate their learning and to use technology, to use interactive discussion, to use even a Facebook page strategically as a way of encouraging learning and to create lifelong learners.